Welcome and thank you all so much for joining us on this evening for ECA's monthly national call. We're really excited about tonight's call on multi-solving, which may be new to many of you. Some of you are also new to ECA. We are grandparents, great uncles, and great aunts, and just everyday folks are determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and for all life. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders in building the political will needed to solve the climate crisis. ECA is elder-centered and volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, and engage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and federal levels. And we're always looking for more volunteers to join our national leadership committees. Reach out if you'd like to learn more, and we'll drop links in the chat. Now, to tell you a little bit more about this call, this is going to be an hour-long presentation followed by a Q&A. So please feel free to add questions for our speaker in the Q&A box. After the national call, we're going to have a 15-minute action party with our partners from the Climate Action Now app. We hope you'll stay on for the action party and help us to reach our goal, or maybe even exceed it, of 100 actions in 15 minutes. Tonight, we're delighted to have Dr. Elizabeth Sawin, who is the director and founder of the MultiSolving Institute, a think-do tank that helps people implement win-win-win solutions to protect the climate while improving equity, health, biodiversity, economic vitality, and well-being. She's a biologist with a PhD from MIT who has been analyzing complex systems related to climate change for over 25 years. Welcome, Dr. Sawin, and I'll turn it all over to you.
Thanks so much, Frances. It's a real pleasure to be here. I feel like in these times, there's so many places we could be putting our attention and so much that is needing our attention. So it just feels like a gift when people choose to spend an hour or more together, and I appreciate it. Before I start with my slides, I want to just also introduce my colleague, Kelsey Eccles. At the MultiSolving Institute, she serves as our engagement manager, and we're going to be doing some work today that will include a poll and a new piece of software called Flower, and Kelsey will be helping me behind the scenes with that. So thanks, Kelsey. And I'm going to share my screen and get us started. We're going to start with some slides. The basic idea for this time is a bit of an introduction to this word that you may or may not be familiar with, multi-solving. But I'm going to move through that as quickly as I can so that we can also put multi-solving into practice a little bit as best we can do in a webinar. The other thing we're going to rely on today is some polling software called Poll Everywhere. And the goal for this is really, it helps me a lot if you will use it. In a webinar, it's hard to see each other's faces the way we could if we were together, but we'll be able to use the polls to kind of bring your voices into this conversation. So Kelsey is, I think, putting the link into the chat, or you can use the QR code and make your way to Poll Everywhere, and I will launch the poll here. And so you should be able to, once you get through the welcome screen, just type in a few words or phrases of what brings you here today. I heard Frances mentioning being grandparents, great aunts and great uncles. Maybe you're here on behalf of children and future generations, or maybe there's a piece of nature that you're here to protect. Just no right answers, but would love to hear what brings you to do this on a weeknight evening. Future generations, yeah. So as you start to answer, you'll be able to see what your fellow webinar participants are saying. New perspectives, I hope we can offer some of those today. Worried for the future of all interconnected life and my kid. Yeah, I share that one. Learn ways to take action. Curious about multi-solving. Earth stewardship. Nice. Multi-solving curiosity. Sort of strategy, like how to use the limited energy we each have more effectively. Be more effective. Grandchild's future. Concerned about our climate crisis. A planet that he can live on and enjoy. Children everywhere to have enough food and clean air. Learn about multi-solving. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for just sharing that. It helps me feel a little bit more connected by all of these things that I think we share in common. We have one more question on the next slide, and make it a little bigger for you. So we'll do this in poll everywhere too. I'll advance it in just a second. But when you think about the need for climate action, how does that leave you feeling? Like, what's the one or two like most prominent emotions that rise up in you about the need, the urgency, the crisis, whatever comes to mind for you? So you should be able, and this one will work better if you keep it short, like a word or 2 words. And we're going to kind of create a picture together about just, you know, today in this moment, we're feeling anxious, worried, overwhelmed. Oh, I'm taking a deep breath, right? Frustrated, sorrow, but love, there's love there, right? One of my teachers is Joanna Macy, who points out that the degree of all of this, the fear, the rage, the sadness, is proportional to our love and our protectiveness for what's precious. So we'll collect this for just a few more seconds. There's a sense of hurry, I see, a sense of possibility and gratitude, maybe gratitude to do this work. The bigger the words are, of course, it means the more of you express them. So I'm noticing the ones that jump out are, those are big. Those are big feelings to carry. Thank you for sharing that. Sometimes we jump right away to action, but I appreciate the chance to just name part of what is driving us to take action. So I'm going to step back and zoom way, way out for a minute, kind of building off of both why we're here and what we're feeling, to talk about, in my view, and I've been doing work on climate and related issues since my kids were babies, and they're now 26 and 23. What do I think is really needed now? I think the first one I have a feeling we all agree with, which is to prevent multiple existential problems from worsening. And I would put climate change in this category. But of course, climate change isn't the only one. We have biodiversity loss. We have growing scarcity of fresh water. We have fears about new pandemics and so on. So there are these incredibly serious problems, and the goal is they're underway, and we need to prevent them from worsening. And already we're in the territory of the multi-solving, because it's not just one problem. The second thing we need to do at the same time, right, is to adapt to the impacts that we're too late to prevent. That's really obvious, I think, to all of us with climate change. We're now scrambling to prevent more fossil fuel consumption, adding to more future climate change. But we're doing that already feeling the destabilization that comes with the climate out of balance. So we're preventing at the same time we're adapting, at the same time that we are doing our best to undo, to make right both historical and ongoing injustices, structural racism being one of the most prominent ones here in the United States, but there's many others. And these problems are so interconnected that I've come to the belief, convinced by many scholars and analysts that you can't untangle them. And so we're preventing, we're adapting, and we're trying to make a more just world at the same time. The last one that I'm convinced of is transforming worldviews of supremacy, whether that's men over women, white people over people of color, humanity over nature, worldviews that don't fit how the world actually works. And those worldviews are, in my belief, the reason for the first three. Like, we're having to prevent existential problems, adapt, and undo harm because we've been, as a global society, working under worldviews that just don't really fit our world. So those are huge, but the potential of multi-solving is that we can act in ways that make progress on all of these at the same time. So here's how we define multi-solving at the Institute: using one investment of time or effort to solve for several goals at once in a way that also improves equity and strengthens a web of relationships worldview. So that's that antidote to worldviews of supremacy. So that's kind of abstract, a lot of big, lofty ideas. The thing about multi-solving is that it's also incredibly practical, and it can happen at any scale, very, very small local scales, city, national, state, federal, and we'll talk about some examples throughout the next hour. I do feel like often the best way to explain multi-solving is to give examples. So I'm going to share two of my favorites. If you go to our website, which Kelsey can put in the chat, it's multisolving.org. Later on, you can find more case studies like these two. So this one's from a program in the UK. It's called Walk to School. And it was a response to a crisis. And the crisis was a growing number of children who weren't getting the daily recommended amounts of physical activity, with all sorts of implications for their health and also their social emotional development. So the project took schools, families, teachers, planners, municipal leaders, and kids to work together to make the routes to school safer. So they did audits of the dangerous intersections and found ways to make them safer, and education and other things to promote more walking to school. In the cities where this happened, they saw a big uptick in the percentage of kids walking to school, big uptick in the percent of kids getting the recommended amount of physical activity. So they accomplished their one of their major purposes, but there were other ripples. There were fewer trips to school by car. So that means less greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. It also means less air pollution, which is a second win for health of those kids because they're not breathing in air pollution when their lungs are still developing. Families didn't have to make that school run. So they were saving money on gas and maybe didn't even have to have a second vehicle. There was less congestion, which made the city work more efficiently overall. So that's an example of multi-solving, where one investment of time creating these safe routes to school was paying off in children's health, people's financial bottom line of their households, congestion, air pollution, and greenhouse gases. The second example comes from New Zealand. And so this was a national program, where the one in the UK was city by city. This was also a response to a crisis. In this case, it was the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And New Zealand wanted to get the construction trades back to work. And so they did that by setting up programs where people could get home energy upgrades. So they got, as you can see in the photo, insulation in their attics, new windows. I think there were new boilers as part of this program. And that's, around the world, something that has been happening and is happening more and more. And you already can start to see the multi-solving in that. It did indeed get jobs, get construction jobs, going again after a financial crisis. And it also, of course, reduced energy bills for the people living in those homes and reduced greenhouse gas emissions from the building sector. So you're starting to see a couple win-wins, right? You have jobs, you have what's sometimes called the energy burden, the percent of someone's income that they spend on energy, and you have greenhouse gas reductions. In other words, you have climate protection. The fascinating thing that happened in this case was that they brought in researchers who did health assessments of the people who lived in these homes, and they found that there were really striking reductions in both visits to the emergency department and the need for prescription medications, because these homes were more comfortable, better heated. Just the people living in them, especially those with respiratory conditions, were healthier. And in fact, when they measured out what that was saving the health system, it actually offset almost, it was a bigger savings than the energy savings if you looked at it in dollar terms. And that was such a success that in the second round of the project, the health department partnered with the energy conservation department in order to expand the program. And eventually they got it to the point where physicians could refer patients for these home energy upgrades. So win for health, but also win for the environment and for the economy. So those are two examples of multi-solving that I'd like to talk about, and hopefully they give you a flavor. So I'd like you to go back to the poll everywhere. And this time the question is, what are some examples of multi-solving in your community? It could be you're involved in something or something that you've just been watching and are excited about. So we'll go to the next question. What are some examples of multi-solving in your community? And you can just enter a word or a phrase. Decarbonization, energy efficiency programs. So maybe something like that New Zealand project. No idea. Fair enough, right? One thing about multi-solving is that it's not necessarily presented in a way that people see it. Climate justice, city space with food, rebates for EVs and heat pumps, local governments buying EVs. These are great. Solar panels over canals in the desert. Yeah, so that's reducing the evaporation of water by providing shade and of course giving space for the solar panels. Solar cooking, tree planting. Yeah, tree planting has so many benefits for physical and mental health, reducing the urban heat island effect. Solar panels put up by formerly incarcerated folks. So there's a jobs and skills component. Transforming vacant lots into growing plots, bike paths, planting for bees and not using pesticides. Great. We'll take just like a couple more. These are beautiful. Adaptive grazing of livestock. Food sharing, that sounds like a specific one maybe in Germany. Solar equity, community food bank, less food insecurity and waste. Yeah, that's a climate solution because food and agriculture is such a big source of greenhouse gases. Cogeneration, new trees, creating canopy. Yeah, right. I think you guys have the essence of multi-solving. So the good news, over 10 years, our team has been doing scans around the world for multi-solving. And I can really confidently say we see examples everywhere we look, at every scale, in every sector. So to me, that's one of the most heartening findings of my career. But multi-solving tends to be the exception, not the rule. And I think there's 3 reasons for that. One is that the capacity to multi-solve is collective more than individual. It takes our individual skills, but we need to come together across different departments like energy efficiency and health, if you think of that New Zealand example. And our world isn't always set up for those types of collaborations. The capacity is just often severely undernourished. We're educated in silos, right? We have our specialties that we learn about and often kind of stay within. And those skills of collaborating across them, we maybe haven't developed as much. And then there's just structural obstacles that stand in the way, whether it's the way that budgets are allocated, the way that different departments in the same city might exist in different buildings even, people may not know each other. Simple obstacles like that still stand in the way. So at MultiSolving Institute, part of our mission is just to make it easier for people to multi-solve. And one of the ways that we've been experimenting in doing that is with a new app called Flower. And what Kelsey and I would like to do for the next little while is show off our new baby Flower a little bit. I was saying to the folks before the call started, Flower's brand new. It's actually not available yet publicly, so you all are getting a little bit of a sneak peek. But we hope that it will just engage your creativity about multi-solving and what it might look like in different places. So to do that, I'm going to invite you to be a little bit playful, a little bit experimental, and for the next 15 minutes or so, 20 maybe, we'll see. I'd like to invite you all to consider yourselves members of a fictional city I made up. Think of it as a typical, if there is such a thing, US city. And you all are members of the Citizen Climate Assembly. I'm going to tell you what your role is and how Kelsey and I are going to support you in a really important job. So you represent citizens from all segments of this imaginary city of Greenfield. And your task is to work together to advise the mayor on the use of a newly acquired parcel of land in the city. So our role for Kelsey and for me, I'm going to use this tool Flower under your direction to support your deliberations so that you can make the best recommendation you can to the mayor. And Kelsey's going to help in the background, particularly using the polling software to gather your input to the mayor. So here's a little more background for your deliberations. So it's a parcel of open land. It's been donated to the city. Its location is between a residential neighborhood more on the outskirts and the city center. And imagine that's about 4 square city blocks in area. The mayor's main goal is to use the parcel to help reduce the city's carbon footprint. And your job is to find ways to do that while meeting other important needs in the city, because Greenfield, like every other place I know, has a lot of challenges. So here's a little bit about what else is needed in Greenfield. A Greenfield Community Association, a nonprofit in Greenfield, did a community needs assessment, and they say there's a top priority of improving health, especially fighting cardiovascular disease and chronic illness. And there's 2 secondary goals that are also important, maybe a little less important, fostering a sense of community and connection and more well-paying jobs. There's also in Greenfield a conservation commission whose top goal is to protect native pollinators whose numbers are falling really rapidly. So as the Citizen Climate Assembly, we're really looking for your ideas on how to reduce Greenfield's carbon footprint, but address these other goals: health, sense of community, jobs, and protecting biodiversity and native pollinators. So what we'd like you to do is go back to take a few seconds, take 30 seconds or something, and think about your ideas. And then enter them in Poll Everywhere so we can all see them. And here's what will help this work well. If you put 1 idea per entry, and you can submit several ideas if you want, just do it 2 or 3 times. And if you're able to articulate it in a few words or a phrase, name some of the benefits that you think your idea could bring. So here's an example of what we're looking for. I might say constructing a walking path through the parcel to connect neighborhoods will reduce greenhouse gases due to less driving and improve health by promoting walking. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, type something in the chat and maybe some of the other folks can help me address that, but trusting that it does make sense. Let's go back to the poll. There you go. So what are your suggested project ideas? And remember, if you can, name what benefits, including reducing the carbon footprint, but what of those other benefits that Greenfield is looking for might come along with your idea. Awesome. Solar panels over a shaded play area for kids, exercise stations, community gardens, solar farm with food farming, community garden, native pollinators, community solar pollinators and fruit trees, getting excited. Community gardens, teaching facilitation, pollinator gardens. Give every family in every school a copy of the Green Actioneers Family Action Guide. That's a very specific one. I'd love to see that guide. Solar panels over place for pollinators, flowers or vegetables, ecopreneurship, ecological entrepreneur projects, garden roofs, solar panels to the garden, teaching about vegan lifestyle. Great. So I'm seeing lots that are about gardens, which is awesome. And I'm going to just also we want to be as expansive as we can right now. So if you have a little voice that's saying bike paths, or a little voice that's saying carbon sequestration with biochar, or I don't know, our goal is to get a really broad suite of ideas. So I don't want to rush you. We'll keep it open just like a little bit longer. Food forest, nice. All right. So what's going to happen next, and I think Kelsey has the hardest job of the night, is that she's going to take this list and organize it for us a little bit so that if there's a lot of duplicate ideas, we'll just really present one. And then we're going to pick a few to work on with flower. So while Kelsey's doing that, I am going to shift us back first to the slides. So to remind you of where we're going, we're about to dive into this tool flower, which looks like a flower, and it's a flower of 8 different co-benefits: health, biodiversity, climate, protection, food and water, built environment, resilience, so resilience to shocks, including climate shocks, jobs and livelihood, and connection, which is social cohesion or a sense of community. Flower stands for the Framework for Long-Term Whole System Equity-Based Reflection, which is a mouthful, but we like how it looks like a flower. So we're going to go to flower, and we're going to start while Kelsey is organizing the list over here, this area called Assess Need. So think back to what I told you the community organization had said about the primary needs. First, we have the mayor telling us that she'd like to see the city's carbon footprint go down. So that fits in this bin of climate protection. So what I'm going to do to indicate the mayor's priority is move this slider. The higher we move it, the more priority it has. So climate protection, we know that's really high. We heard that cardiovascular illness and chronic disease was a second high priority concern. Remember from the community-based organization. And then we heard 2 others. So see if you can remember. One of them was a need for jobs. I'm going to move this not quite so high because that was kind of, they said, a secondary priority. So jobs was one, and one was a sort of sense of community interconnection. So we'll raise this one here of connection. And then the last priority we heard from the conservation group was native pollinators, and they said that was a real crisis, significant priority. So we'll make that one the highest. So what I've been doing is entering the particular priorities of Greenfield into this, the sort of back end of flower. What we're going to do as we parse through some of your ideas is see which ones really line up the most with what the community needs are. So I'm going to pause and ask Kelsey how it's going with the list. If you could kind of come off mute maybe and let me know.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great ideas. I'm almost done sort of getting our different categories together, but thank you all for submitting these really awesome ideas.
So you could use a couple more minutes, Kelsey, it sounds like.
2 or 3 more minutes, I think I'll be
Okay,
good.
cool. So while Kelsey is just finishing up, I'm going to go to the other part of flower and show you how this works. So flower is a visualization that lets us compare the different benefits that come from different ideas. So it's pretty simple how it works. We went through each of the benefits, right? Health, biodiversity, and so on. We're starting here with jobs and livelihoods. That's the one that's selected. So watch what happens when I move this slider up. You see the petal for jobs. You should see that getting bigger and bigger. If there's no benefit, it's invisible. Tiny benefit, it's little. If for some reason an idea actually was damaging to jobs, it eliminated jobs, watch what happens. As I say, it gets somewhat worse. You see the petal turns black. So we use the dark color to mean there's a burden as opposed to a benefit. So that's how it would look for jobs. Say your idea was really going to improve a community sense of connection. That one shows up not as a petal, but in the center, because connection is so important to everything else. The more connected, the bigger. If connection is actually destroyed, like when a big highway goes through a city, that part turns black. So that's how flower works. The second thing about flower is that we give this score called the need match. So that's doing math. That's looking at what we entered as the top priorities. And the more it fits a priority, the higher the score. So you see the score here, 23. The score can be anything from negative if it really doesn't fit to around 100 if it's a great fit. Now, if we remember, we had the mayor saying climate was important. Remember, I entered, if we go back here, climate protection is up really high, right? So what do you think will happen to the need score if I go to the climate protection petal and say, oh, this idea really protects the climate? Probably should go up, right? So you see that number, it started at 23. As we give more and more climate protection, somewhat better, significantly better, we're up in the 40s. So this, of course, isn't a real example, but hopefully that gives you a sense of how flower works. So I'm going to reset everything and go back to see if Kelsey is almost ready for us.
Yep, so I've narrowed it down to our top 20 project ideas. And we've got a lot of things that are a little bit nuanced and different within those top 20.
Great. Okay, so Kelsey, I'm going to push present, right? And then we're going to ask folks to choose 3 and the way that you think are really great ideas that you'd like to see us test. And then we'll be able to look at the ones that get the most votes. So when I push present, the way you're going to vote is by clicking on this thumbs up. Kelsey, are you ready for me to take the control back? Yeah. Okay. And hopefully this makes sense. Type into the chat if you're stuck and feeling frustrated. Okay, so you can see that some of those are getting votes, and as they get more votes, they're gonna filter up to the top. In your view, make sure you scroll down so that nobody gets neglected. Good ideas could be waiting for you to vote them up. And then I think what we're going to do is take a couple that are different from each other and try to make flowers of them. I'm just going to wait till it feels like the shifting up and down has slowed down. Okay. You can keep voting for a minute if you want. I'm going to start with this one on top and go back to flower. So it says greenhouse with solar panels, helps with food insecurity, jobs in the greenhouse, and those could be directed to low income folks. Okay, so let's go back to flower. And okay, what we heard was building a greenhouse. And the first thing that the person with that idea said was, that's going to help with food insecurity. So we're going to make a petal for food. Then we also heard that the greenhouse could provide probably job training and good jobs in growing food for the community. So I'm going to also boost up the jobs benefit. And this is where it would be great if we could hear each other and talk. I'm having to guess a little bit, but I'm going to say also that if this were truly a community-based greenhouse that invited local people in for jobs and also access to food, and maybe there's a farmer's market or something, that feels to me like something that could boost a sense of community too. So I'm going to do that. And then the last question is what we might do about climate protection. So we were talking about the sort of climate footprint of food. And of course, part of it is about how that food is grown, and part of it is about the transportation costs. So food being more local and potentially grown with attention to low carbon agriculture, I think we should make a climate pedal there as well. So hopefully I hope to have done justice to the idea of that first one. And let's go now back to the poll. Train local youth to be stewards of the site. Work with community to design active and passive open spaces with native edible landscapes and rainwater. A compost area, a native pollinator garden. So I'm scanning to try and get a few that feel diverse, so we can get a range of flowers. I think that a good one to try would be a native pollinator garden with volunteer maintenance. Okay, so let's go back to flower, and we're gonna save flower number 1, which was the greenhouse, and we're gonna make a second flower, flower number 2, native pollinator garden with volunteer maintenance. Okay, so the first thing I think of with a native pollinator garden is this idea of biodiversity, right? And we heard that the community is really concerned about pollinators. So there's number 1. What other benefits might come? Well, if there's a volunteer effort to take care of the garden, that sounds to me like community connection could be something. Maybe it's an intergenerational group who's taking care of the garden. We don't know if this person was also thinking about food coming out of that pollinator garden, but let's give that a little bit of a pedal for food and water. So now we've got 2 flowers, and we can compare and see how the scores are lining up. So we have one that's around a 50, another one that's around a 37. I'm going to do at least one more to give you guys kind of a range of things to think about as you give your guidance to the mayor. Community gardens, sequesters carbon, fosters community, gets people outside and active, promotes biodiversity. All right, I like that one, community garden. So we're going to make flower number 3 be the community garden. So I heard food, and I heard climate protection in the way that that food is grown. I heard community, so we'll make the petal at the center for connection. I heard gets people outside and active, so we'll do health and well-being, and give that, you should see the bright blue petal there. Let's go back. Community gardens, sequesters carbon, fosters community, gets people outside and active, promotes biodiversity. So that's the one I missed. We'll add biodiversity. And so we have a slight edge if we're going to go by the need score for flower number 3, but we've got, I'd say, 3 really solid ideas. My hunch is to do one more and then give you all a chance to think about which one fits the best. Walking paths through the garden with exercise stations, a community garden with walking paths between parcels, increase community cooling and decrease carbon, hire teachers to educate in the garden. Okay, so we've definitely got a gardening theme, but a few new ideas in this one that I'm hearing. Okay, so add one more flower. Flower number 4 is the community garden, but it has cooling. Did you all hear that? So to me, that is a climate resilience initiative, right? To fight the increased high heat days that come with climate change. I heard connection, because people are working together, and there's community-based educators. It's another food security. It's another climate protection idea. And I heard about walking paths that connect parts of the city, and also that would provide a safe access to physical activity. So there's our recap. Let's go through and see what each of these is. So the last one, flower number 4, that's the community garden with walking paths. Community, the number 3 was here, see if we can do these ideas in people's own words. The third one, so community garden sequesters, gets people outside and active, promotes biodiversity. That was number 4. The native pollinator garden with volunteer maintenance was number 2. So keep these in mind, be thinking about what your favorite is, because the next step that we're going to do is vote on those. Number 1 was this one at the top, was the greenhouse with solar panels. And help me find number 4. Okay, you're seeing the trouble with my short-term memory here. Kelsey, can you help me? Should we go through these one more time?
Yeah, I believe number 4 was that one also included the hiring teachers to educate in the garden. That included the walking paths between parcels.
Okay. So we'll go through these one more time so you know what you're voting for. Number 1 was greenhouse with solar panels. And the idea of number 1 was that there were jobs. Okay, so this is number 1, there's the jobs. Number 2 was native pollinator garden with volunteer maintenance. Number 3 was community garden gets people outside, and number 4 was community garden with the teachers. Okay. Yep. So take a look at those. In the next poll, you're just going to get to vote for one. And the question really is there one idea of these that stands out for you that you'd like to recommend to the mayor? So we'll go back to the poll, go to the next question. Okay, so people are zeroing in. Flower 3 has a little bit of an edge. Yeah, I'll give a little bit of love to flower number 2. And of course, we can share all of these ideas with the mayor's office, but we'll let them know that flower number 3 is probably the priority from you all at the Citizen Climate Council to really have the mayor look at. And we'll be sure to pass on to the mayor that the things that you really liked were the sense of connection, the impact on health, biodiversity, climate, and food and water. So thank you so much for both going along with that exercise and for your service as part of the Citizen Climate Assembly. So I hope that gave you a little sense of multi-solving, stretched your imagination a little bit. I wanted to show you this example, which inspired me to think up this little scenario. This is a real project from Amsterdam, and Kelsey can put the link in the chat if you're curious. So in Amsterdam, they were trying to reclaim basically an artificial island to have more space for housing, but that will have to take a good period of time until the land has settled enough to build on. So in the meantime, they're going to build a solar farm, which will produce electricity for about 750 households. And they planted around the solar panels plants that are going to promote insects and birds. So there was that biodiversity idea that a lot of you were thinking about. The proceeds from the energy, so people in Amsterdam can opt to get their electricity from this project, and the funds are going to go into social projects that fight inequality and poverty. And the business structure of the whole project is a cooperative that residents can participate in. And they'll get interest payments, and there'll be some sort of democratic kind of worker co-op principles used to decide how to share those profits toward the social goals that the group has. So I thought that was a fantastic example of multi-solving, and I think it's cool that many of the elements of that you all thought of in your imagination as well. So I'm looking at the time, and we want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to give just a very fast tip of the hat that multi-solving does require getting over all kinds of hurdles like resistance to change, jurisdictional barriers, budgetary silos, and just to acknowledge that I think it's the trade-off between the vision of what's possible with these win-win solutions and the persistence to get over these barriers. And I think that we've done a lot of polls, and I'd like to end actually with the same one that we started with, which is, when you think about the need for climate action, how do you feel? And we're gonna make one last word cloud together. So I'm going to advance through a couple polls here. And remember, for this variety, a word or two will work better than a long sentence. When you think about the need for climate action, how do you feel? Effective, hopeful, empowered, connected, inspired. Yeah, this is what multi-solving does for me too. I'm so happy that that you all got a little taste of that. It opens up so many possibilities. One thing we say about multi-solving, an important question, is how can the solution to the problem that keeps me up at night also be a solution to the problem that keeps you up at night? You know, could your kindergartner's asthma get better because we cut the city's carbon footprint? Can your grandson get a good job because we're installing solar panels? I really believe that this is the way forward at cultivating both the vision and the skills to find these win-win solutions is the name of the game. So we'll let this run just for another minute and let you all take in that sense of empowered, hopeful, inspired, focused, connected, collaborative participation. And then I think I will stop sharing my screen and see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sawin. We really appreciate you taking your time to share your knowledge with us, and certainly you've given us a lot to think about. So thanks again for being our guest tonight. Now, we have a few minutes for Q&A, and we hope that all of you in the audience will stay on with us for our 15-minute action party for Climate Action Now app. And last month, we took nearly 150 actions in 15 minutes and over 700 the month before. So get started with our questions. One question is not particularly for Dr. Sawin, but I've seen a couple of times. How do we get a recording? Everyone who signed up will be getting a recording probably tomorrow, and may have a few other extra bonus resources in that. Another question for Dr. Sawin is, shouldn't multi-solving be incorporated parts of all 4 flowers into one common solution?
Yeah, so it sounds like the question is, isn't there a way, if we have 4 city blocks, to use all of those ideas? And I think that's probably what would happen if you all were a real citizen assembly with more than 20 minutes to be together. One thing about multi-solving, maybe you could feel this a little bit, is the way ideas and creativity feed off of each other. So there was something a little artificial, right? Your initial ideas were crafted individually. And then if we had had time for a second round, it would have been really interesting to say, well, what could we really do if we put some of these ideas together? So I guess I would very much agree with the person who asked that question. And in multi-solving in the wild, where it's people listening and learning and imagining together, that iterative nature stands out.
So a related question is, in the real world, about how long would a full flower process take?
Yeah, we've designed flower for the needs of multi-solvers. So I've mentioned that we've done lots of interviews with people working in this way. And one thing they tell us is there really aren't tools designed for the way that they work, right? That there's amazing tools in the climate space. There's amazing tools for biodiversity. You can map, health outcomes by zip code. It's a lot harder to be able to flexibly incorporate all of those. So flexibility is kind of one of our primary goals with flower, which means that there's not going to be one simple, like, how long does a flower process take? It depends what your objectives are. The other thing is that we were using what we call the basic version of flower. We have an advanced version that we would have needed more time to really delve into. But one important thing it does is let you ask the question about equity. For each benefit, who is benefiting, right? We know that's so important on all of these issues. Is it low-income children who are getting access to that healthy food? Or is it, people who are well off and have other options to get access to local food, right? Those would be 2 different flowers. And if we had more time, we could delve into what are the policies you need to include in your multi-solving to make them equitable. Another thing we can do with flower is look at how the benefits show up over time. So we didn't really get into that, but of course, if you're creating these gardens, you're going to be feeding people, within one growing season potentially. Some of the impacts on climate you might not see, as you all know, for decades. Just those are 2 very different processes: growing food versus sequestering carbon and protecting the climate. So there's a way to use flower to look at that time dimension. All to say that it could be half a day, a day. One thing we say is the flowers aren't the point as much as the conversations that get you there. So the more time for conversation, the better the outcome.
So when will this tool be available to the public? And when it is available, will you let us share it with our the folks who are here and our other members?
Yeah, the best way to find out when it is available is to sign up for our newsletter. So I bet Kelsey will stick the link for that in the chat. We're hoping to release at least the very simple basic version we use today before the summer. We're still thinking about the other versions. They probably need a bit more training to really be useful. But yeah, our goal is to make it available to as many people as possible.
And are there going to be training sessions available once the that version of the flower comes out that requires a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We're imagining things like both short videos, if you're the kind of person who likes to, learn in your own office and then try stuff out, but also some kind of, online meetups to practice with a group of other people who are learning at the same time.
With the flower app, who or what decides how much benefit a particular idea might have?
Yeah, that is a really great question. And one of the trickiest things about flower, you notice that we used just very qualitative indicators on that slider, from somewhat better to a lot better. that's deliberate because we want people to have a conversation. If we weren't on a webinar and you all could be talking with each other, we think that would be some of the most fruitful conversations. Like, what's the relative climate benefit of a bike path versus a food forest? You might have experts in your group who could really bring you some data to bring that to ground. You might also emerge with a research question that you want to go look into afterwards. And that's part of us seeing Flower as being iterative. On our longer development pathway, and I'm frustrated so far we haven't found the funder who wants to make this happen. But we think for each petal, people could really use a graded list of the biggest bang for the buck for health or biodiversity, or to just sort of help ground where should you set that slider for a particular idea. So in our fullest vision of what we'd like to have to support these conversations, that's something we want to develop.
I'd be happy to offer you the funds, but I don't think I have enough. So could you please share more US examples from the project playbook?
Francis, could you just repeat that?
Sure. Could you please share more US examples from the project playbook?
Yeah, so that's not our work. That, I think it's called the Progress Playbook, and it's just a fantastic journalist who I love checking out and encourage you all to. So I won't really share more from there. I could share some just from our own work. Other case studies that we've done, one, I'm thinking of Baltimore in my mind today because of the disaster there, is the Baltimore Orchard Project. So it was an urban orchard that some churches and a synagogue and a community group got together to create, and it was a project aimed at food security, but also on combating the urban heat island effect and providing job training for young people in the community. So a lot like what some of you were imagining for this parcel. Another project was from Southern California, was an area that was really being troubled by power outages. So their electricity source was really far from the community, and both wildfires and thunderstorms would cut off their electricity, but they were in the desert, so really had to cope with heat, and they had an aging population, so it was really high risk if the electricity went out. So they worked, community groups, the Chamber of Commerce, I think University of California in some way, and the Department of Energy all came together to build a PV microgrid project. So now the community had its own energy independence, and it was coming from a low carbon source, and they were much more resilient to those threats to their power supply. So maybe that gives a sense of the range of possibilities.
Yeah, those are great examples. I'm sure we could go on for a long time, but we want to switch over to our action party now. Once we get the action party rolling, we'll have more opportunity for Q&A. So if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. But for right now, I want to switch over to Matthew and tell us how to get this action party going.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name's Matthew. I am the content director for the Climate Action Now app. Many of you are familiar with the app. It's a platform that you can use to take action every day on various aspects of climate change. But tonight, of course, we're going to be doing multi-solving actions. I did my best to assemble as many actions I could find from our database that were a close match for multi-solving, solving multiple environmental, health, food security issues at once. So those actions are in the app, ready to go, and all you have to do to access them is to scan this QR code. So if you have the app already, you know all about this. Just take out your phone, open your camera app or whatever you use to take pictures, and point it right at that weird looking box on the right-hand side until you see a little bubble pop up that says Climate Action Now. Tap on that. It'll take you right to our multi-solving campaign in the app. And if you are new to the app, welcome. Hopefully you'll find it to be a useful tool for you both tonight and beyond. But if you don't have the app yet, it's the same exact process. Take out your phone, scan this QR code with your camera app. Again, you're not actually going to take a picture. You're not going to press the picture button. You're actually going to press the Climate Action Now button that pops up when you have the QR code in your camera view. But if you don't have the app yet, it should simply take you to the App Store to download the app. And then once you've downloaded it and done a few setup steps, you'll be able to take action along with everyone else. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, as you can see, we have our blue marble that's filling up in real time with the actions that all of you are taking. We started at, I think, something like 25 or something, and now we're already up to 60. So great job, everyone. You're doing the thing. You're taking the actions. Love to see it. And we want to get to 200 actions in the next 15 minutes. So we need everybody. We need all hands on deck. So if you have the app, get into the campaign through the QR code, or you can also boot up the app and look for this campaign, which is called MultiSolving, in the others, or the other section of the campaign list. So get on in if you already have the app, and if you don't have the app, please start downloading it so that you can take action in a few minutes when you're all set up.
Yeah, we've got 50 great actions for you to take, and I bet now that you know more about MultiSolving, when you use the app later, you'll find even more.
Yes, almost everything is multi-solving in a way when it comes to climate change, right? It seems like there are very few issues that are just about the climate, right? Air pollution is a health concern, obviously. Almost everything that helps the climate also helps biodiversity, you know, all the other creatures that we share the planet with. Water, food, obviously environmental justice, like it's all kind of tied together, right? It's really one big thing in a lot of ways. But obviously there are some clear connections. One of the big connections I think that at least we talk about a lot or work with a lot in the app is, you know, connections between renewable energy and job creation, right? The Inflation Reduction Act, I'm sure all of you know about that and how great that was for the climate, but it's also been a great thing for the economy, right? It's also helped create all of these jobs. And where have those jobs mostly gone? They've gone to red states, right? They've gone to Republican states. So everybody wins with something like the Inflation Reduction Act. The climate wins, people win, and even red states win. So that's something we're trying to a message we're trying to put out there in the run up to the election to try to help folks understand that the climate is not just something scary that they have to be afraid of, but really an opportunity to have a better life for them, for their family, for everyone, if we elect people who get serious about solving it.
Yep. One question we didn't get through in the Q&A is how can we get state and federal legislators to get access to these examples of multi-solving?
Anybody want to take that? Yeah.
I bet that's a great question for you if you're available to answer.
Yeah, could you just ask the question again? I was scanning the chat and I missed it. Sorry.
It's hard to keep track of everything. It's how do federal and state legislators gain access to these examples?
Well, we would certainly welcome those of you who have connections with your elected officials to share examples from our website, which is just multisolving.org. And you'll see there particularly our case studies. So I think that's one great way to go about it. We've also tried to write articles about multi-solving in places where elected officials might look for their information. So there's one, you'll find all these on our website. There's a publication called American City and County, I think it's called. We wrote an article about multi-solving that's there. We, in November of last year, shared the results of some of those interviews I mentioned in the Stanford Social Innovation Review. That's a real nice article because it's super short, but full of real life examples. So those would be some ways I could think of where you could get the multi-solving idea out there with your representatives.
One other I might suggest is just the Climate Action Now app. A lot of our actions give information to the recipient, whether it's a business or a government official, about about the situation, about what's going on, about the proposed solution. And if anybody has great ideas for actions, we are always happy to get those ideas or to help you learn how to write your own actions.
Yeah, and along those lines, if you are interested in joining our volunteer action creation team, you can reach out directly to Matthew, and I'm going to put his email address in the chat. Okay, there's Matthew's address, and you could just say you're interested. It's as simple as filling out a form on the internet, and then Matthew reviews it, and when he approves it, it's about within an hour, it's published into the app. So it's a wonderful way for you to amplify your influence. Because if you create an action, it will be taken by hundreds or possibly thousands of people. And it's a lot of fun. We get together every Tuesday, the team, to talk shop and plan action campaigns and trade ideas, for actions that we can take. And by the way, I just wanted to add, for those of you who are new to the app, you get points when you take actions, and when you've earned enough points, we plant real trees on your behalf. If you're using the app today for the first time, that won't happen to you because you need 3,000 points, Matthew, to earn a tree, and we let you earn 1,000 tree points each day. So you have to use it at least 3 days. It's very easy to get 1,000 points. Typically, it only takes like sending 5 actions or so. So you're not only influencing political leaders and business leaders, but you're planting real trees. And we do that through a nonprofit in Kenya called the Earth Lungs Reforestation Foundation. And they are working with the Kenyan National Forest to help Kenya reach its United Nations nationally determined commitment, NDC. They're trying to increase their forest coverage from 10% to 30%. So we're helping them. You are helping them do that when you use the app to take actions and earn trees. And wow, nobody said anything, Matthew.
I was waiting to come in and say, congratulations, everybody. This is my favorite thing to do at action parties. I got to up the goal by another 100 actions because you guys blew right through our initial 250 goal. So congratulations on that. Well done. And let's see if we can get to 350 in the next 6 minutes here. I think we can pull it off. I think we can do it.
Just so you know, we have very good data. The average can-doer, which is our name for people who take action with the app, can-doers, take 10 actions a day, which is many times more than most people do using conventional web forms like Action Network and so on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of people, we've got a couple of people who are outside the US who would like to be able to use the app. I don't know if there's anything that we can do at this moment about that.
At this moment, no. And it does take there are some ways you can do it. I have special instructions. If you would send a message to support@climateactionnow.com and say you'd like instructions for using the app overseas, you do have to be able to reference a US address. Because right now the app is available to people who have a US address. But we may have, I'm talking tomorrow with an Australian group that wants to expand the app's coverage to Australia. So maybe if you're in Australia, we'll be there. We'd love to go to UK and elsewhere.
Yeah, and actually the folks who have asked about this, I think, are from Canada and Germany. So another couple of places. We also had 1 or 2 people who are having difficulty getting started with the app.
Yeah, again, if you send a message to support@climateactionnow.com, I may be able to help you with that. I'll certainly give it a shot?
If
And we-
anybody, just real quick, the simplest thing to do probably if you're struggling with the QR code is to just make sure you download the app itself. So all you have to do for that is just go to the App Store on your iPhone or Android, whatever you use to download apps, and search for Climate Action Now. Those are the 3 keywords, and you want the black background with white letters and the Earth symbol with a leaf around it. That's the one you're looking for. Don't just download the first one that pops up, because that's probably a paid ad. Look for the black background, white letters, Climate Action Now, and just download it directly from the App Store. And then, yeah, and send us a support email, and we'll help you get to the multi-solving actions. But the most important thing is just that you get on the app, because every day we have new actions for you. We have new campaigns that we're running. It's basically an endless stream of opportunities to take action on the most important climate issues. So if you're struggling to do the whole QR code thing, don't worry about it. Just get the app for now.
We've got one person with a phone number problem. Been long enough since I signed up that I don't remember anything specifically about phone numbers.
The only reason the app asks for your phone number is because when you go to fill out a form, when you send a message to your political leaders, we don't actually send an email. What we do is we take your message and we populate their contact us form on the government website. Those forms almost invariably require the user to provide a phone number. So the app only asks for information if that information is needed to help you do what you're trying to do. We will never call you on the phone without your permission. We won't text you. We never use it for anything. Is that what the question was, Francis?
Now, the question was someone was having difficulty getting an app to take it. I would assume it's a format problem, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, sorry that I answered the wrong question.
And it's an important question anyway.
One question that nobody's asked yet, but I know many of you are thinking it. Does this make any difference? I mean, if I send messages to my political leaders, will it make a difference? And I think absolutely. Matthew, if you could put the YouTube video link that we've created to answer this question,
Sure thing. Yeah.
into the chat. We have in our action parties, we have on our YouTube channel, you'll see lots of testimonials, video testimonials from people who, on the ground, activists from Sierra Club, Climate Reality, other organizations that testify to the effectiveness of the app. Even Bill McKibben, I'm sure will be known to many of you, has done a selfie video thanking the Climate Action Now community for helping save New York's signature law, the CLCPA.
Let's see. And someone's asking, do we include action requests targeted at big companies that need to take action?
Is the
We
question?
certainly do.
Yes, absolutely. There's lots in the app currently, and we're adding them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what is our total, Matthew? What did we get up to? You're muted, Matthew.
We are at 376, so we did it, and it's 5:15. We made it past our goal.
Right.
So you guys are awesome. Congratulations.
Great job, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. We're at 8:15. I want to respect everybody's time. Anybody have one last question? Okay, well, thank you all very much. Now get out there and start multi-solving all these problems we need to deal with. And thanks everyone for coming. And thank you especially to Dr. Sawin.